Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into the weeds of hip-hop careers. It's, a world where art, business, authenticity, they all kind of crash into each other. And our focus for this deep dive, it's the career of Jim Jones. Super charismatic guy, really defined that mid-2000s Harlem sound, major part of Dipset. But while the sources we looked at show there's maybe more to the story, some surprising stuff behind his biggest hits. So our mission here is to really dig into that source material, figure out what's what with these ghostwriting claims, the publishing fights, and this kind of wild comparison people make between Jim Jones and Nas. We want to understand what really made Jones's legacy and maybe what that says about the whole game.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating, I think, is how the creative side, the money side, and this whole question of is it real aren't separate things at all. They're totally tangled up. And looking at the story, it actually tells you a lot about how the music biz really works, beyond just Jim Jones.
Okay, so let's jump right in. Jim Jones, yeah, he blew up with Dipset, had that street vibe, big part of that mid-2000s Harlem energy, definitely a force. But the sources are pretty clear on this. A lot of his success, particularly the lyrics, was tied to, well, other people's voices and pens, not his own.
And this is where Max B comes into the picture in a big way. The sources often call him a major architect, almost like the hidden creative mind behind a lot of Jim Jones's early sound. And the claims Max has made are, well, they're pretty eye-opening. He said himself in interviews he gave Jim, and this is a quote, 10 albums worth of material.
10 albums? Wow.
Yeah, just think about that. That's not just a few catchy lines. It's like a whole career's worth of songs for somebody else.
Yeah, that's a lot of material to not get full credit for. And the sources talk about this huge difference in money that Max B mentioned. Seems like the real core of the problem. He said he was making maybe just a few $100 a show.
Right. Tiny amounts.
While Jim, as he got bigger, was supposedly making like 10, maybe 15 grand per show. What does that kind of gap do to the people working together?
Yeah.
That's got to build some bad feelings.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost guaranteed to. It's not just the cash itself. It's about how much your work is valued, right? When you see your ideas making someone else rich while you're barely scraping by, well, it poisons the well. It stops being collaboration and becomes something else. Exploitation, maybe. Definitely sets up power struggles. And, like we'll see, big fallout.
And it wasn't just Max B writing behind the scenes. The sources point to another layer here, especially with one of Jim Jones's most famous songs. It's pretty much accepted fact, like lore in hip-hop, that Stack Bundles, another really talented guy who didn't get the shine, probably wrote Jim's biggest hit, We Fly High. Ballin'.
Yeah, that specific example, Ballin', it really hits home how much outside help there might have been. And if you zoom out, it brings up that big question again. Who really owns the work? How do you give credit? Especially when someone's whole image, their brand, seems built on stuff other people created. Makes you question what that brand even stands for.
Okay, so that's the creative angle. What about the business side? This gets into what the sources call the most controversial part of Jim's relationship with Max B, the publishing. Seems like Max sold his publishing rights to Jim really early on for not much money, reportedly around $9,000. As part of some kind of bond arrangement.
Right, and the impact of that move is huge. People outside the industry might not get how big publishing is. Selling your publishing is like selling the deed to the land the gold mine is on. You lose ownership of the song itself, the underlying rights. So Jim ended up controlling the royalties for songs Max wrote, songs that went gold. Publishing money keeps coming in for years, decades even, radio, streaming, movies, samples, everything. So that early deal cost Max B way, way more than just $9 grand in the long run.
Yeah, you can see how that would blow up. And it did. Led to court cases, very public arguments, the whole thing. Eventually, a judge said Max could put out his own music, which led to his album Vigilante Season. But then later, Jim claimed he gave Max his publishing back. But the sources say a lot of fans didn't really die it as just a nice gesture. They saw it more like an admission, like admitting Max was the creative engine. And this was kind of a late payment, acknowledging the debt.
And what's really interesting now is hearing Max B talk about it recently. He did this call from prison on Drink Champs in mid-2025, talking about getting out soon, November 9th, 2025. And despite all that history, he said some pretty powerful things like, my personal affairs shouldn't stop the business. I want to start over. I'm a new man. I'm a married man. And also, I don't regret nothing. I'm right where God wants me. It's kind of striking, right? After all that public drama and hardship, he sounds focused on moving forward professionally and personally, like he wants to reset the story.
Okay, let's switch gears now to that comparison that got everyone talking. Jim Jones comparing himself to Nas, even saying, apparently, that he's had more chart success. That's a bold statement, especially against Nas. So we got to look at the numbers the sources give us.
Yeah, let's lay out Nas first, because the difference is, well, it's pretty dramatic. Sources say Nas has sold over 35 million albums worldwide.
35 million. Okay.
Just in the U.S., you've got It Was Written triple platinum. Illmatic is double platinum, which is amazing for an album that dense lyrically. I am. Stillmatic, both platinum too. The list goes on. But it's not just the peak sales, it's the consistency. 3 decades he's been putting out top 10 albums, and he's still doing it. Top 5 albums just in the 2020s with The King's Disease and Magic Projects. That kind of staying power, almost nobody else has that in hip-hop.
Right. And here's the key difference, the thing the sources really hammer home. Nas never used ghostwriters. Ever. His pen, it's legendary, one of the most respected in the whole history of the genre. He built everything on his own words, his own stories. That's like the foundation of who he is as an artist.
Exactly, foundational.
Okay, now, Jim Jones. Let's look at his sales numbers from the sources. On My Way to Church, the first one, maybe 200,000. Harlem. Diary of a Summer, around 350K. Hustler's P.O.M.E. did better, about 674,000. But that was massively boosted by Ballin', right? The song we just talked about, likely ghostwritten. So total career sales, the estimate is somewhere between 1 and 2 million albums total.
So yeah, you hear those numbers side by side. It's just a completely different scale.
Totally lopsided.
It's not just that Nas sold way more, it's how they got there. Jim relying on ghostwriters, it kind of undercuts the whole authenticity thing, which is huge in hip-hop. It's just a massive contrast with Nas, who's celebrated for his pen. And it makes you ask, for you, the listener, how much does that authenticity claim really count towards a legacy in hip-hop? Does it matter more than hit songs if those hits weren't really yours?
And it seems like the public, or at least the hardcore hip-hop fans, kind of answered that question already. When Jim made those comments comparing himself to Nas, the internet just blew up. Forums, social media people were like, are you serious? Comparing someone who needed writers for his hits to arguably one of the greatest pure lyricists ever. It just seemed absurd to them. The message was loud and clear. These two aren't in the same league, and it's not just about charts.
Exactly. It really shows how the audience often has the final say on legacy, and they tend to value that realness, that consistent artistry, maybe more than just temporary chart success, especially if that success feels borrowed.
So wrapping this up, where does this leave their legacies? Jim Jones, he's still a memorable figure, no doubt. That Harlem hustler image, he caught a moment, used his connections, he definitely made his mark.
But yeah, that legacy is complicated. It's tangled up with the ghostwriting stuff, the messy publishing deals, the public fights with the same people who helped him get there. Looking at the big picture, it's a really clear example of how business choices can stick to an artist's story long term. How those backroom deals can end up defining how people see your whole career, maybe even more than the music itself. It shows you who really holds the power sometimes.
And then you put that next to Nas. He just stands for something different. Longevity, pure skill, authenticity. He didn't need ghostwriters. His sales, his cultural impact, it puts him on a whole different level. A giant of the art form, built by his own pen.
And it's interesting to circle back to Max B and all this, not just as the writer, but maybe now as this figure of reconciliation. What he said on Drink Champs about wanting to start over, looking to the future, is compelling. It suggests maybe there's a way past all the bad blood eventually. Maybe forgiveness is possible, even after all that public drama. It adds another layer to the whole saga.
Yeah. So this whole deep dive, it really shows you. One guy celebrated for his own words and lasting impact. The other guy, successful for a time, but always kind of living in the shadow of the people he didn't properly credit. It's a stark lesson, isn't it? How the story behind the music can end up being just as important, or even more important, than the songs themselves. So what did we really pull out of this exploration? We saw how vital those uncredited contributions were to Jim Jones's rise. We got a glimpse into the tricky, powerful world of music publishing. And we saw this really clear divide between a career built with lots of outside help versus one built entirely on one person's unique voice. Definitely gives you a lot to think about regarding success.
Absolutely. And maybe the bigger question this leaves you with, something to chew on, is this. In any creative work, where's the line between collaborating and just taking? Between teamwork and co-opting someone else's talent? And how much does knowing who really wrote it, who really created it, actually shape how we value an artist's legacy in the long run? Think about it next time you hear about a big success story. What parts are you seeing and what intricate stuff might be hidden just beneath the surface?
Yeah, it definitely makes you wonder how often the public story isn't the whole story, right? and maybe pushes us to look a little deeper for those connections, those aha moments that show us what's really going on.